Welcome to balance boundaries and balance, or balance and boundaries. Today's session, well, first of all, let me introduce myself. If you haven't attended one of these webinars before, my name is David King, and I'm a learning and development activist. And I am going to really unpack these two terms with you today. Once again, I try and make my sessions as practical as possible and as interactive as possible. So if you can please kindly participate and contribute. I'm going to ask you some questions, so please pop them in the chat or the question and answer options, just to make it far more interactive. And then at the end of the session, we will most definitely open up to questions, and I'm more than happy to engage further after that. If you still want to send me questions afterwards, I'm certainly open to that. So I hope you will enjoy today's sessions. There's lots of nuggets of information that we can dig into today, especially on this topic. Personally, this is a topic I've had to I battle with myself as a human being. The good news is that it's a skill, once again. So you will have learned, if you attended my past sessions, and most of what we face in the world, we can sort out with tools and tips and techniques to help us cope this crazy world. And as South Africans, we have our fair share of craziness. As you know, today, petrol and diesel went up again, and we were dealing with a never-ending non-supply of electricity. And then politically, as always, it's never a dull moment. And that's what we have to deal with. We cannot go and hide. We cannot go and climb into our caves and not participate. We still have to participate. But what do we do to keep our sanity? Fortunately, there is hope. There's always hope. So let's see today as a little trigger of hope, so we don't fall into our circles of self-misery and pity parties and woe is me. We need to break those shackles, because it's a pointless exercise to participate in. So thank you, just Melanie, for reminding me that the chat is disabled. So only questions and answers, you can pop your questions in the question answer slot. Thank you. Right, so let us move forward. The slide seems to be not refusing to move on. Right. So boundaries. What I'd love you to do is just to pop into the question and answer option. What are boundaries in your understanding? So if I ask you, what is a boundary? Pop it into the question answer slot, please, so I can have an understanding of where your heads lie, because I'm sure you've heard of this term many times, but what does it actually mean to you? Cool, thank you, Andre. To protect you, absolutely. Protecting yourself, thank you, Gail. What else? What else are boundaries? Before I give you my understanding. Are they to protect you, protect yourself, perhaps to help you keep your distance, or perhaps to help you not to be hooked? The fine line, absolutely. And we're going to discuss that further along today when we talk about boundaries at work and boundaries at home. They're limitations. They are things that we should accept and not accept. Thank you. Love it. Boundaries give you a framework from which to operate, so people know where you draw the line. We allow certain individuals, if we think of a personal boundary, we allow certain people within that personal boundary, and others we keep at a distance. Well, thank you for sharing. So boundaries are a permeable and flexible limit. It's not a wall in which you cannot penetrate. It is saying, this is what I will accept and this is what I won't accept. So it's an essential element to have as a human being. Unfortunately, most of us are not born with boundaries. It's not a natural skill that we all have. But once again, like I said earlier, it is a skill in which we can learn and get better at, because what we're going to discover later on is what happens if we don't have boundaries in our life. Often people will say, I don't need a boundary. It's not necessary. But what we hopefully will discover that boundaries are essential. So boundaries assist us in not to overwork, absolutely. With that comment, to know when to say no, spot on, where I end and where somebody else begins. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So there is a direct link to your health and boundaries. So this is, there's some beautiful research out there. And I can, at the end of the slides, I can send you all the research documentation on this topic. But there really is, because often we need to defend or argue why, especially in business, as to why it's so necessary to allow people within an organization to have boundaries. So from a health perspective, from a science perspective, having your boundaries violated can trigger production of what we call cortisol, which is our stress hormone. So when we are unable to practice our boundaries, our body, we self-inject ourselves with cortisol. And what cortisol does, it creates inflammation. Most illnesses and diseases are caused by inflammation. So we don't like cortisol. We need to remove cortisol. Cortisol arises in times of stress and anxiety. And when you get a fright, you get cortisol. Fortunately, as I mentioned in previous talks, there's a wonderful antidote, and it's called oxygen. So as soon as we breathe, oxygen removes cortisol, because what breathing does, it calms us down, it lowers our heart rate, floods our brain, and then we can think more clearly. So back to your health. What happens is when we are flooded with cortisol, it leads to physical health challenges, such as two examples there: heart palpitations and irritable bowel are direct links to having too much cortisol in our bodies. It continues to lead on to things such as, or combination of all, digestive problems, headaches, anxiety, depression, concentration, memory problems, and heart disease. So this personally is a no-brainer as to why we need to check into and create our own boundaries, because it will actually physically and mentally affect your health. So the benefits naturally of healthy boundaries are improved sense of autonomy, because I feel like I'm in control. A sense of autonomy, I can do my own stuff. Improved mental health. We're going to learn later too around burnout. So when we don't have boundaries, it leads to burnout. And that might, some of you might have a little aha moment now and go, oh, maybe that explains why I'm feeling kaput. And then better emotional health. So just some personal sharing. I have battled with January. Today is the 1st of February, so we have put 1 month behind us. We often have this view that the exhaustion of a previous year continues up until the end of December, and then we start afresh in January. But I have personally been feeling very grumpy, and somebody articulated it beautifully the other day to me. They said they feel like they were floating. They hadn't landed yet. And that's a very good indicator that things aren't running according to your plan. So the solution there is self-reflection. And for me, it is to go, well, maybe I need to look at my boundaries and my balance, because something is out of kilter. I'm not feeling refreshed and feeling revived to tackle the year. And I think there's a million reasons that we can use, and I would hopefully think that some of you are feeling the same. Where's my energy? The year's begun and I'm really already feeling quite flat. Just want to check comments. Thank you, Chandra. Absolutely. It's fantastic. That ozone oxygen treatment is an absolute gem. And thank you for sharing exactly. I'm feeling so drained too. So at least I know I'm not alone. Right. So we need to also, it's wonderful to talk about these concepts, but we also need to practically find ways to fix it. So as I said earlier, when there are no boundaries, it leads to two things. And either or both, you suffer from burnout, because remember, there are no limitations. So you are kaput. You're giving away your energy. You are drained. It also leads to, which was an aha moment for me, is resentment. So because you cannot put up boundaries towards other people, you may either resent yourself or start resenting those very people. So it's a fine line. It's a balancing act between both. And this is, once again, research-based. So if we look at our excuses, so as human beings, we're wonderful at excuses. And here they are, being uncomfortable. I don't want to put up boundaries because it's awkward, it's uncomfortable, it's overwhelming, it's daunting, it is scary, it is insurmountable. What else? What happens if nothing changes? And we might also say things like, well, what's the point? Absolutely pointless. Nothing is going to change. So this is all very well. Wonderful to have excuses, because then we can try and justify why we are unable to do what we need to do. And that is obviously a pointless exercise, because what we're trying to do is improve our mental health and our ability not to become burnt out and to become resentful at the end of the day. So let's look at how change happens. And I'm sure a lot of you have in your work environments either are in a role that you have to deal with change or part of a change process, because there's always change taking place. And I found these next two images to be very helpful. The first one is around, how does change happen? So that's the power of small steps. So on the left, you'll see there's a little person with massive steps in front of them. And on the right, you'll see there's a little person with lots of little steps. So that's how change happens. We must just move and make progress. Often we get so fixated on the size of the achievement or the change that needs to take place that we actually don't move. And what that results in is you become disenchanted, disillusioned, and there's no movement. The figure on the right-hand side is someone that's actually now moving. They are making a shift. They are making little steps every day and are moving somewhere instead of being stuck. And I found that pretty helpful. The second one is being overwhelmed. Naturally, when we're faced with so many challenges, it is this for me personally, I feel stuck in the mud. I can't move. And what we need to do in cases of I can't move is to just focus on where you're at. And this is where concepts like mindfulness come in beautifully. So remember, mindfulness is to just be in the moment, to not be worrying about the past or the future, to be here and now. So just focus on that very step that you are standing on. Stop worrying about what lies ahead. Focus on the step and put one foot in front of the other. And that is a wonderful tip on how not to become completely consumed or overwhelmed by movement. What I did with this slide is I pulled on some research that I've done across clients in different industries. And these are what we call boundary statements. So in other words, these are healthy statements that we should be practicing. And you will often find that these can be used both in our personal and our work life. Some of them you're going to connect with immediately, and maybe some of them are not, which is absolutely fine. You'll see every statement is very specific and clear, and it's underpinned by some humanity or some empathy. So you're not coming across as harsh. You are coming across as firm, but you're getting your point across. The first one is, I care about you deeply. I cannot help you with this issue. Okay. You can use this in your whole life if you think about it. So you're really saying here, for this particular thing, I'm not equipped. I've got too much on my plate. So I can't do it for you. I can direct you to the right person or the telephone number or the link to go and click on, to go and make your own booking, to seek help. But I can't do it for you. Okay, so that applies for you as a line manager, as a parent, as a partner, in many, many, many spheres. The second one is, I'm not stable, should read able to support you financially, but I'm willing to support you in another way. So as South Africans, often in a society where we are supporting our extended families. So it's not just our partners and our children. We are supporting parents, grandparents, siblings. And what tends to happen is there's often only one breadwinner who is expected to provide for everybody. And that's just not possible. We have been challenged with tough economic times. So unfortunately, we have to hold back. We have to withdraw what we are offering. And naturally, that's going to upset people who are receiving. And sadly enough, often the people receiving your financial monies or your financials on a monthly basis have this expectation that you owe them. And you trying to support your partner and your children, but your funds are being drained by other extended members of the family. So it's a really tough one. But you have to make tough decisions and tough choices, and that is a boundary. The third one, you can apply nicely in a working environment. We need to, or with your mother-in-law, we need to assess how we handle the way we communicate, because it doesn't seem to be working for either of us. So there's conflict between two people. You're butting heads constantly. One of you, at least one of you, needs to make a stand and say, listen, this isn't working. We're affecting the family, we're affecting the greater team, we're affecting the department. So we need to come together and make a plan. Next one, thank you for your request. I'm not available. When I read this one out, often in sessions, people, especially in organizations, say, oh, we're not allowed to say that. Today, the seed, as I always say, today is the seed. If we want to bring about change in our own lives, in our families, in our work lives, we have to start somewhere. So you're not rejecting the person. It also may be that it's something you can do later. What I used to tend to do in the corporate world, I would drop everything. Somebody would ask me and I go, yeah, sure. And I would make it happen. Instead, the learning here is, thank you for your request. I'm not available at this time, or let me direct you to the right person, or send me an email with all the information and I'll get back to you. Buy yourself time. You don't need to respond instantly. Okay. It doesn't give us the power to think and to process if we respond instantly. So always give yourself time. Say, thank you for that. Let me go and do some research. Let me go and find out. Let me look at my calendar. Send me an email. Drop me a WhatsApp, and I will get back to you. Next one. I think my wife must have put this one in. How did this get in? Only joking. I know you love me and want the best for me. I would like it if you supported me by listening instead of offering feedback. Okay, yeah, my wife definitely put this one in. So this is a lovely example of listening instead of always giving your opinion and correcting and your viewpoints. So when you speak to somebody or someone is speaking to you, focus on them, not on your phone, not on your laptop or desktop. Look at them in the eye, listen, acknowledge, and ask how you can support them instead of just giving them the answer. The last boundary statement is, that sounds very challenging. I would love to help, but it seems like an issue that should be handled by a professional. Once again, we are not Jacks or Jills of all trade. Excuse me. We have a skill set, especially if you're a line manager and even a parent and a partner. You can't fix everything. You don't always know the answers to everything. So redirect people. So I'm here to support you. I can't do it for you, but these are some ideas and some suggestions. And what you're doing, you are actually empowering your child, empowering your partner, empowering your team member, and sometimes you're even empowering your line manager instead of just doing everything for everybody. End of the day, you kaput, you're exhausted, you say, I can't answer another question because people ask me questions all the time. They're asking you because you're constantly giving them the answers. I just want to check the questions. It's quite difficult in work environment to put up boundaries. Absolutely. So we're about to move on to some tips in that space, because research once again indicates that the most compassionate thing you can do for employees is to reduce their workload. How about that? If we think about it, if you're good at something, or even you may be guilty of it yourself, if you have a team member that is competent and capable, you give them more work versus somebody you know is not going to do what they're supposed to do. So you start limiting the work that you give them and you hand it on to somebody else. Right. Before we look at the tips in the work environment, I think I've used this slide before, but I've used this slide often because it's a constant reminder. Discomfort is the price of admission to a meaningful life. Okay, so Susan David is a South African, another South African who's changing the world. She's a professor at Stanford University, and she does a lot of research on feelings and emotions. But I think this really hit home for me because I did not like the statement. But the more I spend time with it, and it applies so beautifully to boundaries, is that we actually have to move into discomfort if we want to get somewhere. Comfort is not going to get us somewhere. It's the discomfort, going to explore why we feel the way we actually feel. Lovely quote around boundaries. You're not required to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. Okay. You can, the others will warm their hands on you. They will cook their marshmallows and their shish and nyama, but you will burn out. There'll be nothing less left. So it's a complete lose-lose situation. So this is a wonderful slide to print up and put on your around your desk or on your office door. So if somebody comes to burden you or vomit all their problems onto you, this is a reminder. So 6 habits for healthy boundaries before we move on to the workspace is awareness of and acknowledgement of your own needs. So this is where self-awareness comes in. So we've got to know who we are, what we accept and what we don't accept. So we have to do some self-work. Unfortunately, we have to do some digging. It should say, believe you are worthy of taking care of yourself. No one else is going to give you permission. You have to take permission. Be aware of others' boundaries. So as much as we put up boundaries, someone may be putting up a boundary in your life, in their life. So you can't go, oh, who do you think you are? Because everyone's entitled to boundaries. Be aware of your own tolerance for hearing a no. When you receive a no, how does it make you feel? So imagine when you're saying no to somebody else, potentially they're also going to feel differently. You need to find trusted people in your space, the actual words to communicate your boundaries. So practice your language when engaging with boundaries. And very importantly, vulnerability. Okay. You ask for help and don't wait till you have it. Okay. You can't be perfect. You're going to stuff up. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to practice. Practice correctly makes perfect. So the more you do it, the better you'll become at boundaries. Okay, so we'll look at that again shortly. So here is a very simple slide to the how-to with boundaries. Wars keep boundaries out. Wars keep everybody out. Boundaries just tell people where the door is. That's what you're doing. You're just directing people to the door. Okay. Remember, when you first put up boundaries, you're going to feel selfish, guilty, embarrassed when you set a boundary. Do it anyway. There's being bold, being brave, being awkward, the discomfort of it. Why are you doing this? Not because you hate people, not because you don't like people, not because you're avoiding people. It's because you're caring about you. So it takes practice and it takes determination. Start with the small boundaries before you tackle the big ones. That makes a lot of sense, because if you tackle the small ones, like the stairs, you will make progress. If you tackle a big, massive one, it's not going to be a quick fix, and you might become very disillusioned and despondent. It will give you the confidence to continue and to carry on. Right, this is what a lot of you have been asking for. So boundaries and the workplace. Okay, so once again, the research done by Stanford University is very clear on this topic. It's not a tree-hugging, nice to have mumbo jumbo. It clearly indicates that an organization that doesn't have boundaries will not allow people to, first of all, be psychologically safe. In other words, you can't say what you need to say. It doesn't allow people to be creative and to grow and to make mistakes, because it suppresses you when you can't say no or you can't ask questions. Okay? So ultimately, what boundaries do for an organization, they empower. It allows people to come, and this is a direct link to diversity and inclusion, once again, and employee wellness, to be your own person, to come as you are and not having to pretend to be somebody that you are not. So the benefits of boundaries in the workplace naturally then flow into increased productivity, because you have a workforce that can express themselves, can question, can challenge, can admit when they're wrong, can make mistakes, leading to improved mental health, leading to better relationships, because I can be myself, I can be vulnerable, I can be open, leads to greater respect, because now I'm not suspicious, I'm not unsure of that person, I know who that person actually is. Set standards for acceptable behavior. So when people are not following boundary-related behavior, we can call them out, because when you are in a psychologically safe environment, you can call people out without demeaning them, humiliating them, putting them down, because they are not abiding by everybody's rules and regulations around boundaries, leading to open communication. It reduces your negative grapevine, because we don't need to go and discuss other people at the water cooler, because we can openly talk to someone and say, you're not being a team member, or I'm battling with the way you talk to me or the way you send me emails. Let's talk about it. Let's resolve it. And then finally, it helps to manage expectations. So if you look at that list, it's a no-brainer. Once again, why would organizations say that you're not allowed to be open and be yourself? Yes, it's risky because we don't know what's going to come. Okay. There's the discomfort. There's being bold and brave. And then on the right-hand side here, there's just a cheat sheet, 8 ways to establish healthy boundaries. And you'll see the word no comes up time and time again. Okay. Remember, we're not saying no because we dislike or that we can't do it. We're saying no for our own mental well-being and our own sanity, and because we're possibly taking on stuff that is not part of what we should be doing. And often we're saying no because we need to empower the other person to go and think for themselves and do it for themselves. Think of your children, think of your team. Often they come to you with asking for an answer. Send them away. Go and explore, go and be curious, go and investigate, and come back to me with what you think at the end of the day. Right. Are there any questions on this slide before we move on? Cool. So there are actually 5 types of boundaries you can set in the workplace. Okay, so now we can really get down to the detail, practically. Physical boundaries, obviously related to your body and your space. Okay. Also, it may include taking a break, not working late, finding a workplace where you can focus. It might lead to having to have conversations. I know I've run a session on hybrid workspace, and this is going to be an ongoing journey that all organizations are still grappling with. Must everybody come back? Must we allow people to choose, or can everybody work from home? So there's no one set of rules for all organizations. You've got to understand your environment, your space, and your role, because some roles are designed that they can be done at home, and others practically it's impossible. So if you're in retail or you're working in supply chain or distribution, you have to have a physical being there. So you have to find other ways to allow people to have flexibility in their roles. It's also directly linked to our personalities. Some of us enjoy or are inspired by having other people, and others of us do better when we are on our own. So you could have 2 people doing exactly the same role, and one would thrive at home and one could thrive in an office environment. So there's complexities, but that's once again why it's so important to understand what each and every person needs. Okay. Yes, from a logistic perspective, it's very challenging because now each and every person requires a different type of space or even a different type of leadership style. And unfortunately, that is the reality. So we can't pretend and just go back to the way it was, because there ain't no going back to anything. We have moved forward, we've moved on. The second one is emotional and intellectual boundaries. This is related to prioritizing your feelings, thoughts, and ideas, and giving other people the same respect. May include keeping your personal life private, agreeing to disagree. Okay, so lots of discussion around this. Okay, because we're trying to create a world in which we can be our true selves anyway. Okay, so we shouldn't be different people at work and different people at home. We get to decide how much we want to share of our work and our personal lives at the end of the day. And we have to respect that. We can't then judge somebody if they don't want to come out and have drinks every Friday afternoon. They may not drink alcohol. They may be practicing a religion that frowns upon alcohol. So try and find something that is all-inclusive. We mustn't be set in our ways because we've always done something that if you're new to the organization, you must just fit in. That's not inclusion. Okay. The third type of boundary is priority and workload. Ooh, lots of debate and discussion around this one, as I said. Related to how you protect your workload for optimal performance may include being clear about your capacity, asking for more time, and the declining tasks. Okay. We overburden. We often set up people to fail because we don't clearly understand what they're working on or their capacity. Okay. Time boundaries related to time management may include having clear timelines for when you can take meetings or not working after hours. So there's a lot of shift in this space. Employees are more demanding on their personal time and saying, and a lot of companies are introducing concepts like there's a cut of time for sending emails. There's certain days of the week in which you can or cannot have meetings, just to allow people the flexibility. So we don't have back-to-back meetings. What the research says around Teams meetings is meetings have increased because now we can have back-to-back meetings. There's no in between. There's no having to move somewhere to go to a meeting, which is not healthy because if we have meetings constantly, when are we actually supposed to be doing the work? And then the last boundary is communication boundaries related to how and when you communicate about work, and may include declining text messages for work matters, not accepting calls outside of working hours, lots of discussion, lots of debate. This is something, if you are in a position of influence, these are the things we need to talk about. As a team, we're going to come to some team agreement about working hours, about when we contact each other. If we've got a WhatsApp group, what we must put on that WhatsApp group, when we can communicate on that WhatsApp group. We can't just do whatever you like, because that's going to, that will directly impact boundaries. So boundaries, as we've learned, are there to support you. Sit with others in their discomfort rather than try and fix them. Let go of what is not yours to hold. How often do we hang on to stuff that's nothing to do with us, but we burden ourselves with other people pouring out their issues onto us? Take responsibility for the energy you bring into your life. Somebody said to me the other day, you make a conscious decision when you walk into a room of how you're going to come across. Are you going to walk in there reserved, quiet, energyless? Or are you going to walk in there with an optimistic approach and a solution-focused approach, especially if it's going to be a difficult conversation or difficult meeting? Walk in there with, I'm going to resolve what's happening here, instead of walking into a meeting or a situation going, oh my God, this is going to be terrible. Because what are you doing? You bring that energy into the meeting. Take time and space for yourself. Block out time for yourself. That time might be for you to do more, listen to more podcasts, to eat your lunch outside, to go for a walk, to read a chapter of your book. These are the things we need to do. These are the examples of the boundaries that we need to create to allow us to have energy to cope with this crazy world. And then become very selective with your yeses. We can't say yes, yes, yes to everything. So the empaths, empaths generally have a major challenge with saying no, because they just want the world to be a better place. They want to please people. That's why people pleasing is disastrous, because then people will take advantage of you. Right. So I have a question. So I've done lots of talking. I got very excited about this topic. If you look at this slide here, So moving into the balance space. So we've really spoken about balance already. But if you look at those 4 options, balance is whatever makes you feel balanced. So it will vary from person to person. So if you look at those 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4, will you pop it into the question and answer where you see you fit? Are you 1? Are you 2? Are you 3? Or are you 4? Far away. Get your fingers clicking. Thank you, Terrain. 1. Definitely 2. Andre 4. Would like to be 4. Leona 2. Melanie 3. 2 is where you act, yes, because it could be current versus where you want to be. And that's personal, absolutely. 3, 2, 1. See, what a mixed bag. 3, 4, 3. How's that? Cross the spectrum. And it is personal. And it is job specific or life specific often. Roberta 1. So this is a very interesting term, balance, because there's a better word for balance. It's actually blend. We shouldn't be balancing our lives. Remember, we have one life. So we need to blend, and it's often going to move, and it will look different depending on what we're doing. So when we have deadlines, it's going to lean to the one side. When we are completed with our deadlines, it might lean somewhere else, which is quite normal and natural. So we got to understand there's an ebb and there's a flow. It's not going to be static. It's not going to stay the same. So when we're in that zone where we're not particularly happy about, it might just be in that moment in time. It is what it is for now. It's the end of year. It's the end of season. It's those in the finance field. You have certain periods where it's hectic, but then you have periods when it's not hectic. So embrace that and make sure that when you're in those hectic times that you are doing something to energize yourself. Otherwise, you're going to be completely sapped. So I thought this was a really helpful little activity to do. So how do we what tools can we use to be more balanced or to be more blended? Okay. First one is, yes, discipline. Once again, depending on who we are, some people just tend to be better disciplined than others. Once again, it's a skill, so we can learn it. We can waste terrible time. I'm a wonderful procrastinator. And what procrastination does for me is that I leave things to the last minute. I'm quite capable of doing them. And what it puts me under intense pressure. And then I try and justify it. And I say, well, I work well under pressure. But actually, when I think the damage is done mentally and physically and emotionally is really not worth it. Disconnecting, we have to learn to disconnect. And disconnecting can mean different things to different people. The first one is this. We need to learn to have a break. Don't sit at night when you're in bed scrolling through your social media, because it's going to sap your energy. Okay. Read a damn book or do some exercise before you go to sleep. Learn to do something different. So maybe for you, disconnecting is to wake up half an hour earlier, or to do some exercise, or to go for a walk, or to bake, or to garden, or to cook, or to play with the dogs, or to sing, or to dance. Put on the music and dance your life away. We need that ability to disconnect. Trim. Saying no to non-essentials. Okay, saying no without regret. Think about, there's so many things that we do that we shouldn't be doing, that we just say, we just do it for the sake of it. Okay. If your mother-in-law wants to come for tea every single Saturday morning, then perhaps you have to have a trim session, and you need to have the discussion to say it can't be every Saturday. We can do it once a month or alternate Saturdays, and not because you dislike your mother-in-law, but because there are other things that you want to do. And remember, you're doing it for your own self-care. There we go, self-care. Time for calm, peace, sleep, and healthy habits. Do it for you. Self-care is not with other people. Self-care is for you. Okay, it's not selfish. Okay, because if you don't do self-care, you can't help anybody else. Remember that. If you don't look after yourself, then you are going to be a parent that battles. You're going to be a friend that battles, a partner, a sibling, an employee that can't give you all. Relationships, find the people in your life that support you and do not pull you down. You may have people in your life that do sap your energy. You can't avoid them, because the reality is they are probably your nearest, maybe your nearest and your dearest. So work out to limit your time, or if you do have to spend time, make sure you energize. So don't go into that discussion, that gathering, if you have no energy, because then you're going to be completely sapped. The same as a work environment. If there are individuals at work that sap your energy, plan it correctly. Plan those meeting times. Make sure when you go into the meeting, have your energy, because if you're not, they might be sucking your energy from you. And the last one is, yes, it's courage. We have to be brave and bold. We have to be courageous. And once again, courage isn't owned by some people. We all have courage. Okay? Courage means that you have to make difficult choices. Okay? You have to let go of the fear of disapproval, the fear of being liked, the fear of disappointing others, because you've got to remind yourself, what am I doing this for? I am doing it for me. So very importantly, what we've learned today around balance and boundaries, essential. We're potentially terrible at both of them. All is not lost. You've been given some great tools and tips and techniques, and this PowerPoint and this clip will be shared with you. Obviously, we're recording it, so you can watch it and spread the love. But this ending that Brené Brown often uses is to stay awkward, to stay brave, and to stay kind. And it really, for me, pulls it all together, because it's through the awkwardness and the discomfort and the uncomfortableness that we actually learn. We have to be brave and courageous to do new stuff. We must never lose our humanity. So this is where the kindness comes in. So this is my blessing to all of you, and my suggestion to all of you is to go forth and just try 1 or 2 or maximum 3 things that we've covered today. You can't do everything. That's not balance and boundaries. It's those small steps that you implement regularly that will ultimately become a habit. Right. I want to see if there's any questions. So please feel free to ask me some questions. We've got some time. But thank you for attending, Lorraine. Absolute pleasure. That's what it's always an eye opener to me, even though I regularly do content like this, because it's a constant reminder. We need it constantly. So if there's anything specific around boundaries and balance you want to ask me, please fire away. Happy to share with you. Happy for you to mail me. These are my contact details to get hold of me when I'm not on the beach. And yeah, so thank you very much for attending. I will hang around until 10 o'clock. If you want to just pop any questions, otherwise off you go, and don't delay. Go and practice the boundary today. So think about your those people in your lives or those situations in which you need to put up a boundary, and go and practice it. Good luck, strength, courage, pleasure, everybody. Pleasure.